Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jez, and I'm thrilled you're joining us today for another fun-filled episode where we sprinkle a little magic on the world of business and leadership. Each week, we dive into fascinating topics that inspire and educate, all while keeping things lighthearted and enjoyable. Magical Learning has been running successfully as a training and facilitation company for over 20 years and has partnered with global thought leaders like Robin Sharma and John Mattone. So whether you're a seasoned leader, a budding entrepreneur, or just curious about how to make learning magical, there's something for you here. Grab your favorite drink, grab a snack, and sit back, because it's time for some magical learning. All right, Danette, first cab off the rank, our Director of Learning and Adaptability Specialist. How are you going this week? And that's also our new intro.
I love the new intro, Jez. Awesome. I've had a bit of an up and down week this week. So I was in Canberra for 2 days. That was lovely. Came home and the snake had got one of our chickens, very sad. And then this morning, I think the fox got 2 of our guinea fowls. So the girls are reducing in numbers, which is very sad. But other than that, it's been a beautiful week and very grateful to be on the podcast today. Very excited about the topic too.
Yes, and we'll get into that very shortly. And Grahame, our CEO extraordinaire, how are you going this week?
I feel completely underprepared and underdressed after that intro. Thanks for the heads up. So I am experiencing a renewed sense of imposter syndrome, which is awesome. And for those of you listening, watching overseas, welcome yet again. Please don't interpret Danette's sharing of some minor incidents regarding reptiles and carnivorous creatures as just another 2 reasons not to come down under. Just come on down anyway. Bring your suit of armour. Don't go into the countryside. You'll be fine. Yeah, I'm good, Jess. Sorry. After all of that, and for those regular listeners, they'd be sitting there with their cuppa, their bowl of popcorn thinking, oh, he's gone again.
Well, we should say also, I forgot to mention, if you are driving or something, don't feel obliged to grab a cup of tea or food. Feel free to just stick to the road. That's another scenario that I didn't factor in. Or if you're just even doing a chore, there's no necessary part of food or drink. I just wanted to give people a bit more of a heads up of what's going on at the top. So hopefully that's been achieved.
Probably a really important safety warning, however, is that do not listen to or watch this podcast whilst operating heavy machinery. I think it's important. It's a community service announcement.
Good thinking.
We need Al on for that one.
Al is one of our facilitators for new listeners who also has been doing a lot of stuff with cranes, getting his crane license, as well as Pilates. So very exciting. Hopefully we'll have him back on shortly. This week we are doing a concept sandbox. You might have seen that in the title. And if you don't know what that is, we're basically going to be taking a concept that, well, we're going to be having a conversation about just something. In this case, it's going to be the topic, a fresh set of eyes. But we're going to be pairing that nicely, not unlike a beautiful wine with a delicious Italian dinner. We're pairing that with a business problem that will take place in a sort of fantastical world. Now, the reason that we do that is because business problems can occur in any business, in any situation. So we figure, why not have a bit of fun with it and apply it to a mythical situation so we can sort of enjoy it in a sort of more lighthearted way. And we don't have to worry too much about making any potential partner in the future angry, which is always nice. So let's before we get into anything, I think, does anybody have like a sort of fantastical world for us to set this to be the sandbox for this concept sandbox?
I actually asked one of my clients about this, but I actually reckon his recommendation, we should all go watch the movie and then come back for it. But I'm going to say it anyway, just to say thanks to Shane from RSM Australia. He suggested Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So I reckon, because in that you go into a suitcase and you come into this world where there's all these amazing beasts, and it was a prequel, apparently, to Harry Potter. So I reckon we watch that one and come back for that one, because I reckon that'd be really fun. I've got a couple, but I'm going to see if Graham's got any first.
I had nothing until 17 and a half seconds ago, and then bizarrely, because I was thinking fresh set of eyes. So if I did the opposite of that, would be what's a fantastical or a fantasy setting that I can think of, really, where somebody lacks eyesight, for argument's sake, because, I'm too literal. And I went with the probably funniest version of Robin Hood. So I went back to Sherwood Forest and Mel Brooks, Men in Tights, and the character whose name I believe was Blinken, who didn't have sight, although he got it temporarily for 7.5 seconds during the show. And if you haven't watched that movie, folks, you probably should. But again, please don't go and do that now.
Well, I mean, do you want to... Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we just go for Robin Hood? I think let's just lock that in, and you can interpret that as Mel Brooksy as you like.
Yep, okay. But I also take, so Shane, thank you for the suggestion, and we'll add it to the future playlist of movies
Yes.
for Fantastic Beasts.
Shane is our first ever call-in fantasy scenario applier. So Shane, thank you for that. That's an honor you've got all for yourself, though. We have not applied it this time. We will go check out that bit of media and then come back to you. So we're going to be doing Sherwood, Forest, Robin Hood, Men in Tights. The problem I had today was that the Robin Hood, Men in Tights business problem is that they are thinking of launching they feel like they need to launch a new product, but they just don't know what. So they're kind of just going to be, that's the business challenge we're going to be looking at. So this business feels like they kind of want to expand to a new product. They don't know where to go yet. So that's what we'll be looking at in the background. But we're going to be sharing a story or two or an insight or a fact about a fresh set of eyes and what that means to each of us. So, Danette, did you want to... Oh, actually, Grahame, why don't you kick us off? I always start off with Danette. So, Grahame, did you want to kick us off this week?
That's usually just because Danette is more punctual than Grahame. But I'm considerably older, and it just takes a lot longer to do. I think Ches will be going, this is going to be hard to edit in post. So hard. All right, fresh set of eyes, a new product. We need some new blood in the merry band of freedom fighters in Sherwood Forest. I do like the idea of a fresh set of eyes. I guess it's always there's always the opportunity. This concept of fresh set of eyes is a good reminder for all businesses, and particularly those that are very successful, is that at some point, the saying is often attributed to Einstein. I'm not sure whether it was his, but I don't think it really matters because I think it still helps. The level of thinking that got us to here is not going to get us to there. But the thinking that created the problems we have at the moment is not going to help us find the solution, sort of thing. So in that sort of context, Robin and his merry person are going to need to think differently about where they want to get to. Even a small part of their goal is not just ongoing survival, but actual improvement. So it's not just enough for us to maintain the status quo, because particularly in a business context, if that's all we're looking for, then we will disappear. Literally, at some point over time, we will disappear. So I think the idea of we need to launch a new product, we need to improve, we need to get better, we need to do something different to what we're doing today. And usually the quickest way to help understand what that, or identify what that might be, is to use that figurative fresh set of eyes. Sometimes that might be just how do we step back from the day-to-day busyness and look at who we are, why we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, etc. From a different perspective. Did any of that make sense, folks?
I think so. I actually think...
For those of you who, sorry, Jess, just really quickly, if you're listening right now, pick up the phone and dial a number, any number. It'll get through to us because this is a mystical, magical universe, and it'll reach us. Sorry, Jess.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I think we can probably use a little bit of what actually happened in the movie Robin Hood, Men in Tights, which is maybe we grab some people from different areas to help come up with the ideas. Maybe the ideas are coming from the same area and we're not thinking of new products because we're not bringing in new people.
Genius. Yeah, and thank you. Yep.
That's all right. And to relate it back to the movie, of course, there was famously Achu, which is played by a very young Dave Chappelle, who, is sort of a different flavor on what the Merry Men looked like at that time. And then, of course, Blinken, who is blind. So perhaps that gives you a new perspective as well. So I think that there's some different elements, even from that movie, that could maybe give us some insights into where to start looking for some new products.
One of the lessons we learned from a business coach a long time ago was in the strategic planning space. When you try to take a step back and look at your business more critically, more strategically, it often helps to bring someone into your point, Jez, who has zero experience in your industry. Intellectually, it sort of sounds counterintuitive, but from a creative perspective, it's magic. There's that word again.
Did you want to say anything to that? I've got something actually I just wanted to say off that. Is that okay? And then I'll throw to you. So I was actually I've been doing another podcast with Anne Braithwaite, who's been on this podcast, friend of the show. And some of the people that we've been talking to are academics. And one thing that they actually also repeat is exactly what you're talking about there, which is that a lot of academics want more inclusion from other areas of expertise because that fresh set of eyes may help them solve some of the problems that they're struggling with because they're just so locked into how they're used to seeing it. And that was we've recorded about 3 episodes of that. I'll make more of an announcement. You can go check out that as part of the extended magical learning adjacent family. But so many of these the academics are interested in trying to bring together people from different disciplines because they're aware that they're not knowledgeable in that area and there's so much more to learn there. So anyway, that's enough from me. Danette, did you have any thoughts about what we've been talking about just then? And anything for Robin Hood as well, maybe?
Yeah. So for me, I love questions, but I wanted to build on what Grahame and you were both saying just then, that there's this whole concept of part of Fresh Eyes is also talking to your stakeholders. And I was thinking, yeah, they've got a pretty successful model, but I wonder what happens if they go and talk to the rich that they're stealing from, but also to the poor that they're giving those things to, and seeing the impact and whether they've got different ideas about, how could we do that perhaps without the stealing and still be able to help the poor? So that was one of mine. The other one was they were pretty successful. Like, they did some good stuff. The thing, and it sort of comes to what Grahame was saying before too, is that one of the reasons we definitely need fresh eyes is when we get really successful in businesses, often businesses then start to become more insulated. So they actually don't seek fresh perspectives, and they start to believe their own rhetoric. So they're going really well and they think they're awesome. They don't talk to their clients and stuff like that. So they don't go and talk to the poor, for argument's sake. And all of a sudden, actually, their success starts to decline. And there's been many organisations that's happened to because they haven't kept that fresh set of eyes. So I think that curiosity, how do we stay focused on what's really important to us and how do we bring in those different perspectives, I think is really, really helpful. And I think that would help Robin Hood and his merry band of people. So great. I'm loving this sandpit.
Yes,
Hey,
me too. Yes, I was going to explain to John. Welcome, John. John, our facilitator, welcome to the conversation. How you going?
Oh, look, glad to be here. Sorry I'm so late. At work impacted on me. It's terrible stuff. It's one of those 24-letter words. But I got the impression we're talking about Robin Hood and a fresh set of eyes.
Yes, and we're talking about Robin Hood, the business challenges that he wants to launch a new product. So they're trying to work out how to decide what that is. But John, you are officially a fresh set of eyes on this conversation, so it's only appropriate that you came in a little bit late because I feel like you are bringing that fresh set of eyes.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, just going off what Danette said, I mean, nothing fails like success. So I agree that you've got great companies who, Kodak, for instance, and you can name multiple companies throughout time that have been so successful but haven't moved with the times. BlackBerry would be another one for the American listeners. And maybe, even Steve Jobs losing his role at Apple the first time, or the time that he did, allowed him some perspective as well. Yeah, and where do we go? What do we do? Where do we take this to? Might have been a good question for him coming back from Apple.
Yes, I've got a point too that John's just sparked my brain, that in coaching, you learn this concept of toleration. So it's things you're doing where you're like, you don't really want to do them. And so I wonder whether talking to the merry band of people and actually saying to them, what are the stuff we're creating at the moment that you're like, and what could we replace it with? What could be something more helpful, more fun, where you're not turning your nose up having to create them? So it could just spark an idea, because pretty much everyone in all of their roles will always have something they tolerate.
But the Mel Brooks take on it, I mean, yes, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it sticks to the story. He's just put his comedic spin on it, which to me was a fantastic movie as opposed, look, and I like the Russell Crowe ones, I like the Kevin Costner one, but it was a new take on the old story that let's take the mickey out of this, because things may be grave, but they don't need to be serious. But it still sticks to the story in the end, kind of.
So is there, I mean, there's a great metaphor, analogy, thing, that word, about business in general, and taking, in this case it was a movie, but we could look at this in the context, Jess's suggestion around the challenge opportunity for Robin and his merry people right now is to come up with a new product, a new service. So how do we sort of reinvent ourselves? And in one sense, some filmmaking is doing exactly that. So Mel Brooks was taking a product that was already in the market and looked at it and thought, well, how do we make this different? I'm not going to get into the whole better, because that's just a no-win. And I don't think it really matters. I think part of the thing is, how do we just create something that is different to what might already be available, that somebody out there in the marketplace is going to find sufficiently valuable to want to throw money at us for.
And I think, sorry, I was just going to say quickly, John, just off of what you, John, Grahame, and Danette have all just been saying, it's about also creating a great workspace where you're adding a bit of fun to the element of this, because having the fun is going to open up the creativity elements of people where they can feel more open to come up with better ideas. And I think that's kind of, even the Mel Brooks approach is kind of a fun way to look at things.
Yeah. But even what do the merry people need? Because are you going to stick to your same line of business that maybe that's all you do? You rob from the rich and you give to the poor. But what is the other need? And there are other needs associated with that people have, all people have. It's how do you fulfill those? So
I think I've got something for you, John, because I think this features in not only the Robin Hood from Mel Brooks, but also the Robin Hood from Shrek. It's the entertainment portion. It could be the new service. They do a lot of singing in presenting things. So perhaps there's, when robbing rich people is getting a little tough for some additional product or some additional cash, they could potentially do entertainment.
Do the stage show. I mean, let's be honest, the Mel Brooks ones had a stage show behind the curtain and they're all sitting in their rows watching. You can look at that and see what that is without me explaining. But yeah, what are they good at? And where can they take that market? Because the need is there. And stage shows, for instance, is going, well, entertainment of whatever sort, is going to be well accepted by a lot of people. But yeah, getting out and getting on Broadway might have been the next step for them.
And I was just thinking, to sort of riff off that, is what if they created a show where they fed people and the people could be the rich, so they perhaps give them a VIP experience, charge them, that subsidises the poor in this instance. Maybe they also buy the food from the poor so that they create this whole sort of thing that utilises from the earth through people's bellies and back again, so that everyone wins.
Robin Hood.
Well, feeding on that though, Danette, I mean, if you put on a stage show, only the rich would be able to afford to go. So you'd be charging them, and yes, you then buy the product off those that are working the land that have no money. Yes, you create a whole enterprise around that gets supported. And as long as you maintain good entertainment, the rich will keep coming. And then you throw a pickpocket or two out the front and you can earn a few more dollars.
I think that's a great way to blend both of the businesses there, John. I like it. Maybe, I mean, this is also back in the time of stagecoaches. So maybe on their way back home, you've got some of the merry people set up, a K away from the stage, and you just pilfer one of them.
Well, you feed the rich full of booze.
Yeah.
They may not make it home.
I was going to say that they could then hire the merry people out as bodyguards.
Yeah.
And that way they earn the money legit rather than illegit.
And you've seen that in businesses like the mafia, who they do the extortion of the shop owners, but they will also hire out some of their people as bodyguards because they can make good coin out of that. And now you see them up on stage talking about their antics that they carried on with, that they went to jail for, and making a profit, turning a profit that way.
In fact, actually, John, I've been listening to a podcast occasionally, which is by a guy who's an ex-mafia guy.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a Robin Hood podcast. If they can work the technology out, perhaps they can talk about some of their hijinks and get some advertising revenue onto the Robin Hood podcast.
Absolutely. But again, it's utilising what they naturally do, and people are interested. People want to know. You think of any of those sort of groups, whether it's Robin Hood or Highwaymen or Ned Kelly or whatever, people wanted to know what they were doing. Now, back in those days, they didn't, and don't get me wrong, don't go into becoming a criminal, but there's plenty of podcasts around, whether it's an ex-mafia guy telling his tales, whether it's someone else talking about the mafia, whether it's someone else talking about White Earp or Robin Hood or whoever. People love those stories. So there is a market there that they could expand into.
John, I like all of that. The point you made before about find out what your customers, your clients, find out what the market wants and create that. And then I was thinking about, because I started the whole nonsense, the whole Robin Hood thing, and I was thinking about Hollywood, and Hollywood's a really good example, or just movie production, maybe rather than just labeling it Hollywood, but movie production I think sometimes is a great example of creating something that you're not sure, well, that you believe or that you hope will work, but you're not really sure whether it will or not. Because I mean, it's the industry's littered with examples of incredible failures from a financial perspective as well as amazing successes. So, and in business today, that's really tricky. So the idea of Robin and his band creating something in the hope that it might work back in the time of, what year was it, Jess? It was back when they actually were still hanging around Sherwood Forest and just helping out, because there wasn't as much pressure financially for them to, well, they weren't even looking to succeed financially, I don't believe. And Prince John was a fairly ready source of cash, and perhaps that's where some of the earliest protection rackets maybe came from. Not sure. Historians will shout me down. I don't care. It's a podcast. Do what you want.
Also, I wanted to say the year that Robin Hood is set in is the year 1190. So,
90 or 9, Jez?
90.
90. 1190.
Yeah. The 90s.
Okay. Yeah, so I was quite young back then.
But then okay, you talk of the spin-offs and you're talking about movie production. You think of when movie production started, there was, a couple of blokes and a camera and some actors doing some basic stuff. Look at the industry that's grown up around that progressively over time, and there are roles for so many people off that are behind the camera. You couldn't have imagined it back when it first started. It's just blown up.
Yep.
So if you're going to look at business, it's, I guess, start with where you're at and try different things, put a budget against it so that you're not just throwing money after money at it. Yeah, I mean, try different stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, Danette, you go.
I was going to say, so to that point then, one of the things we could do is beam into Sherwood Forest AI and see how AI could give a fresh set of eyes, not to solve it, but to partner potentially, just to see with what sort of things, if we were looking forward to the future, what might be some potential new possibilities in terms of business ideas. That's my thoughts.
Just to clarify for those sitting out there trying to reconcile the year 1190 with artificial, we are talking artificial intelligence, not the other AI.
We are talking artificial intelligence.
Because I do a lot of work with farmers at the moment. Sorry, John, we might not have shared this, but one of Jess's suggestions early on in today's session was bringing different. So in the case of Robin Hood Men in Tights, one of the ways of helping to identify new potential services, products, etc., is to bring different people in. So in Men in Tights, there were different characters like Archu, who was culturally very different to most of the rest of the band. And we also talked about my favourite, Blinken, who had a great sense of hearing but tended to walk into things. And then we were talking about, great piece of advice that we got from a business coach a long time ago was, when you're looking at your business strategy, sometimes the best thing you can do is bring in somebody or other people who have no experience in your industry at all. So this concept of fresh set of eyes. So I was thinking with just wrapping all of this up into something that makes sense for at least two people. In this context of Robin Hood, Sherwood Forest, Danette's comment about bringing in AI, and even if we can't borrow the TARDIS to go back and do that. And if you are listening, folks, and you think, what the hell's a TARDIS? Then shame on you. So when you finish listening or watching this podcast, you go and find out what a TARDIS is. What if they just got some people in the security industry from a different part of England and brought them in?
And are you listening to your stuff? Sorry, Danette, go.
I was just going to say, maybe even from a different era. So if we can bring in artificial intelligence, maybe we bring security people from different ages, potentially. Sorry, John, over to you.
Do you bring in, automatic weapons? Like how? No, but rather than bow and arrow, you take an automatic weapon. Give that to Prince John or King Richard and see what happens. But
we talked sort of about this prior to Christmas. We're talking about relationships, or I can't remember the conversation. And I remember I made comment about go and talk to someone you don't like, because, you're talking about a fresh set of eyes. We go to people that we like, who have had common experiences as us. So therefore, we're getting the same sort of feedback all the time. When you go to someone you don't like, or you've got no experience with, or from a different part of the forest or a different part of the country or whatever, they're going to give you a very different experience that you may not see. So, yeah, talk to different people.
That, John, because what that helps us overcome is confirmation bias, because we inherently, that's why we go to people who think like us, sound like us, etc. The problem is it gives us blind spots. So being able to talk to, whether it's someone we don't like, whether it's someone we don't know, that just gives us a broader perspective of what could be possible and potentially what the market might want that we can't see, because we all think similarly if we're Robin's band of merry people. So, so who could they be talking to that actually would broaden their perspective about what others might actually need? I really like, one of the things I often do is compare and contrast stuff. So I'll go, let's say they're looking at bows and arrows. I go, okay, what is this similar to, but also what is it different from? And could we combine that to create something new? And here I'll use the iPhone as an example. People prior to the iPhone had a separate camera. They had a separate phone. They took notes by hand, or they had their laptop or whatever. And I like that they combined a number of things. So I wonder if comparing it to different things and contrasting could actually highlight that there's maybe something that we do like the iPhone that is multiple things rather than just one. Or the other thing I love to do is, what do they stop doing? Because maybe there's something they're doing that actually is not making them happy, not making them effective.
Yeah, great questions for them to ask. It'd be interesting to see what kind of inventions they would decide to come up with, a la an iPhone, to combine some of their different heisting techniques. And maybe that's the new product, is just developing that technology and then selling it so people can kind of do their own things. I wanted to go to my thing that I brought to today's conversation on the topic of fresh set of eyes. So this is from an online creator, and her name is Veronica Lightning Horse, and she's from she's a Native American creator, and she just shares like old Native American stories. And this is a really good one. It was which is about a fresh set of eyes and just different sets of eyes. So basically, it's a story of an old man and a young boy, and the old man gives the young boy a rock, a stone, and he says, "Go take this to the market, and when people ask how much it is, just show them 2 with your fingers." So he takes it to the market. Someone looks at it and goes, "Oh, this looks really good. How much for it?" And he raises the 2 fingers, and the person goes, "Oh, $2. Great. That's a great deal. I'll have that." So he takes the $2 home. He's stoked. He's got $2, shows his granddad. Goes, "Here you go. $2. How good's this?" He's like, and the granddad goes, "Well, I've got another one. I want you to try taking this one to the jeweler." So he gives a similar rock to this kid. Kid takes it to the jeweler. Jeweler goes, "Oh, this is really good. Where'd you get this?" And the kid doesn't say anything. And he goes, "How much for it?" He raises 2 and he goes, $200. What a bargain. And turns out there's a gem in there. So so the kid comes back. He's stoked. $200. Comes back, and his granddad's like, "All right, now take this one to the museum." Takes it to the museum. The museum goes, "Oh my goodness, you've got an ancient bit of amber here that's captured like an old mosquito or something. I forgot what it was. How much do you want for it?" The kid raises 2 and he goes, $2 million. That's a steal. Here you go. Gives him $2 million. And the idea of this story is that it's not necessarily the object itself that has any value. It's what people can understand and bring to that creates the value for that thing. So I guess using that element to the Robin Hood thing, I guess their question could be, are we even in the best area to do this? Are we helping the most people? Is this the right location? Perhaps we could be a more valuable stone to another set of people. So that's another thing to maybe look at.
Of that, Jez, can I tell a story that sort of adds to that about value? I heard a story once about this person who handmade furniture, and they were new to that career. So they basically just charged for the parts, really. So it was beautiful furniture. And they used to go to this really reasonably exclusive market. And every month they'd go home and they, like, if they were lucky, they'd sell one piece, but most of the time they sold none. And one of their friends said to them, this market expects it to be expensive, so triple your price and see what happens. And the next weekend, she sold out. Exactly the same stuff, but, that market value. So one of the things maybe is for them, it may not be a new product. It might even just be looking at the marketing and the value that people perceive. So maybe what they work on with fresh sets of eyes is what is the value that we give to the market that maybe we're not seeing, which is why speaking to everyone else is important. My ideas anyway.
Yeah. Great stories. If we go back to that sort of fresh set of eyes line or theme, getting different perspectives sometimes help us value what we don't value. And contextually, that's us as the service deliverer or the provider of the product or the service, so we don't necessarily value it. Maybe because we made it, maybe because we have some imposter syndrome stories around what we think it's worth, and therefore we just put a value on it without ever finding out what other people might think it's worth. Cool. Which is what both of you just said. I just like talking out loud. I find value in that.
Well, look, I think it was a good way to summarize it all, Grahame. So that's good. But speaking of summarizing it all, I think we're kind of getting towards the end here. So Robin Hood, I guess, do we have any final thoughts on today's conversation? I might start with you, Grahame, here. Do you have any final thoughts on Robin Hood, what he should do, and even today's conversation on a fresh set of eyes?
Well, I think part of the story that you shared, Jess, was one of the things that came to me, and I talk about this a lot, and I apologise, except I don't, and that is why. Now, going back to why do we exist as a band of merry men, as a band of people who are looking to reassign some of the recognised wealth of certain individuals to other individuals who don't have as much. And I think getting that different perspective, or even asking other people about the whole why question, could definitely help. Sometimes we need to reframe or just come up with a new why because the old one isn't relevant anymore. I was going to really quickly just tag in, because I can, Van Helsing, the movie. So I was thinking Robin Hood, merry men, tights, all that sort of stuff in the forest, bows and arrows, staff, in the case of Little John. What if they bought I think it was a cross between a minigun and a crossbow that fired, 20 crossbow bolts a second sort of thing. What if they had that? Great topic, Jess. Thank you, as always.
Look, I mean, that's also a good one. I think the cool thing about today is we haven't just talked about specific items that could be available, but a whole spectrum of things, from being in theatre to protection to podcasting to the TARDIS to even down to staffs and crossbows. So I think that there's a lot of options. I think if I was Robin Hood, I'd be pretty stoked with this free info that we've given him. Danette, did you have any final thoughts on a fresh set of eyes in today's conversation?
I think it's a great topic, and I think that no matter whether you're a startup, it's a business idea even, so you haven't even started up, through to you've been in the market for a long time, I think being curious, asking questions, trying to pick different people's brains, particularly people who you may not have dealt with before, is a really good way of staying wide open to possibilities. So I think it was a great podcast, and I reckon, just to counter Grahame's thing, shooting lots, could they come up with something that no one gets harmed with and it makes the world a better place? So again, that compare and contrast, maybe they can do something that actually harms no one and maybe helps others. So who knows? Great topic. Thanks, Jez.
Robin Good, in a way. Very nice. Thanks for that, Danette, and great insights as well. John, any final thoughts on today's conversation, fresh set of eyes, and Robin Hood, what he should do?
In terms of businesses and Robin Hood, you don't have to go, a million miles away or across the other side of the country to get perspective. A lot of decisions are made in bigger organisations by management. But when was the last time management went to the coalface? And you see it in shows like Undercover Boss. For me, I find that a really interesting show, that they go down to the coalface, and I get that they handpick who they're going to sit them next to or work next to. I get all of that. But they get to see the business and how it actually works or operates, or doesn't, for that matter. So management needs to get out of their ivory tower, or the leaders need to get out of their ivory tower, and Robin needs to go back to his merry men and say, how are we doing? What can we be doing better? Get that feedback as a start point. and they may have a lot of creative ideas as to what we can and can't do, or what we can drop, what we can do better.
Well, I love that. And thank you all so much for some great suggestions today. I think we've had a lot of fun. And I think that, as I said before, we've really handed out over some really good ideas for the whole team over at Sherwood Forest to sort of percolate on. I want to say thank you all so much for doing this Concept Sandbox again. It's always a blast. I always have a great time. To everybody that's been listening and sharing, thank you so much. We're now over 3,500 subscribers on YouTube. So thanks for sharing, everybody, and thanks for listening. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.